I just want to really welcome everyone here this afternoon. It's a brisk day here in Albuquerque. I'm freezing. I forgot my jacket at home, but I want to thank everybody and all the folks from El Centro for being here today. As you know, there was a resolution passed in 2000 as a city as being an immigrant-friendly city, and then in I think it was last year I actually introduced a resolution, a memorial to actually reaffirm Albuquerque as an immigrant-friendly city. And there were some things in there that at the time we wished we could have put a more stronger language. But as we move forward and know that what's happening in Washington today, that it was really important for us to do this at this time. And I really want to thank Councilor Pat Davis for co-sponsoring this resolution with me. So hopefully this language actually clarifies some of the original language in the 2000 resolution that we had. I just want to start, I'm not sure if everyone's real familiar, but there's the national news this morning, and it's talking about that young man who was brought here when he was 10 years old and deported back. And this is actually, I live in a community where this actually happened to one of our neighbors. He was brought here by his parents when he was 4 years old, and actually he is part of our neighborhood association, productive members of the community. And as an older man, and he has a family, wife. He actually was deported back to Mexico, and he had never been there, and talking to him, his family, they had asked him, what part of Mexico he was from, and he said, well, he was from a small city in Mexico, but he had never been there. He'd lived his whole life here in the United States, but, they sent him back, and it's unfortunate tearing apart of a family here in our community. So, with that, it's just kind of something that hits close to home. And now that this is national news, this is not just happening to abroad, but it's happening here, and we need to make sure that we strengthen language that we have already. So with that, I just a small comment. I have some words here, but I don't really want to go into all that. But what we need to do, we need those here without documentation to know that so long as we don't violate our laws, the Albuquerque Police Department will not do the work of the federal government. That is why I'm co-sponsoring Resolution R7 at the City Council to strengthen Albuquerque's immigrant status as an immigrant-friendly city, to promote public safety and to protect civil rights and the dignity of all our residents. With this resolution, we intend to ensure that no city resources and funding will be utilized to enforce federal immigration laws. That means no more ICE at the prisoner transport center. Being immigrant-friendly, not only does that express a perspective that politics and fear of coming from Washington is not what's best for Albuquerque. So with that, I'd like to introduce City Councilor Pat Davis.
Thanks, Councilor. And let me add my appreciation and say thank you to Councilor Peña, who has been a leader on this from the beginning and carrying the torch from previous councilors who stepped up time and time again every time our communities have been felt pressured or under attack or felt anxiety about how our city and our values would respond to people with Twitter accounts or big press conferences in D.C. This is incredibly important. And, I came to this job as a former police officer, and having worked in police departments that saw this issue in two very different ways. I remember what it was like working in Washington, D.C. with immigrant families who were afraid to call us when they needed our help because sometimes calling police into their home meant that other folks would follow and take them out. And now, as a city councilor here in Albuquerque, we have heard from some of our advocate friends and our immigrant friends who've come to us about new challenges under the new administration, and new folks who are now concerned that when they go to pay a traffic ticket, as any of us might normally do, they might not make it home at night. And for a lot of our students, including some of our immigrants and DACA students in high schools like Highland High School in my district and Albuquerque High just up the street, students are creating networks and text message chains to be sure that if they go home and their mom or their dad is not there when they think they should be, they have a safe place to go. And that type of anxiety, tearing our families apart, doesn't just run counter to New Mexico values. it makes New Mexico less productive. It makes us less welcoming. And so I'm proud with Councilor Peña to introduce this new resolution to clarify what we kind of thought were some pretty clear standards in last year's resolution. But as we've seen, the old administration still invited ICE into our prisoner transport center. We're still willing to participate. And so with this, we intend to make it very clear. So at a time when our president refuses and refers to immigrants as rapists and murderers and degrades their home countries, it's our obligation more than any other, and never has it been more important for us here to not only reaffirm our commitment to our immigrant brothers and sisters, but to go further and strengthen our commitment to them as members of our community that are welcome to participate with us. So they've come here to prove themselves, and we should welcome them here. And no immigrant, no refugee, no family member of someone with a different citizenship status should feel unwelcome in this building and City Hall with us. And so that's why we're bringing this back as a new challenge to the police department and to the new mayor to help us close the gaps, to make sure that Albuquerque feels 100% immigrant and refugee friendly for decades to come, no matter what the challenges of Washington. I know our time is tight today, but I want to introduce at the end of the day some of the folks and some of our families who deal with these issues in their own families, and welcome them to talk to us for a few minutes about what that really means. Is Marianne here? Oh, hi. I want to welcome Marianne Mendez-Serra from El Centro de Igualdad y Derechos, who's one of our organizers with our immigrant families from the beginning, to talk a little bit about their work.
Definitely. So good afternoon. My name is Marianne Jasmine Mendez-Serra. I'm a proud New Mexican, DACA recipient, and community organizer with El Centro de Igualdad y Derechos, an immigrant rights and workers justice organization here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We have over 4,500 members, of whom are low-wage workers. And I would like to thank those organizations that are in support, in addition to those that are present here, which includes New Mexico Asian Family Center, New Mexico Faith Coalition for Immigrant Justice, Islamic Center of New Mexico, and OLE, among other of dozens of the organizations that are in support of this. Since day one, the Trump administration has aimed to separate immigrant families by expanding an already massive deportation machine, dumping millions of dollars in for-profit detention centers, turning away and stripping protections of those fleeing violence, persecution, and abject poverty, erode the due process of rights, tramples on our Constitution, and further militarizes border communities and target Muslim communities. The Trump administration has stripped over 100,000 DACA recipients, such like myself, of our DACA protections from deportation, intending to undermine our opportunity to use our skills and intellect, our innovation and cultural competency to our full potential, to support New Mexico's struggling economy. He's trying to target and deport immigrant families such like my parents, who comprise New Mexico workers that are care for our elderly and our children, build and roof our homes, pick our Chile of New Mexico that we're so proud of, work in the dairies and oil fields, and work with New Mexico's service and hospitality industries. We're talking about New Mexican families, students, small business owners. We are Albuquerque neighbors, co-workers, and families that pray side by side with you on Sundays at church. We are New Mexicans, and we love New Mexico and the city that we all call home. Although President Trump has threatened mass deportation, constraints on federal resources will limit some of the damage his administration can inflict on Albuquerque families. As a result, the administration is trying to coerce and threaten local governments into putting into motion his deportation machine. If Albuquerque refuses to act as arms of ICE by passing this resolution, then it is less likely that ICE will have the resources to fully carry out the Trump's expansive and terrifying vision. Today we're saying, ya basta. Enough is enough. We are going to protect our communities. As a state, I'm proud to say that we rejected Trump in the ballot box. In Albuquerque, we have fought locally for many years against federal deportation programs that foment racial profiling and pretextual arrest, that are found to be unconstitutional and target people pre-conviction, gutting the presumption of innocence, enriching our Constitution, and led to devastating family separation. Many of the families I work with on a daily basis have been victims of these deportation machine programs. We cannot allow this to continue to happen in New Mexico. We would like to thank co-sponsors Peña and Davis and urge the City Council to support this resolution to strengthen Albuquerque's status as an immigrant-friendly city. Together, we can make Albuquerque a city in which our children can wake up every morning knowing that their parents are going to return home from a hard day of work. We can live in a city in which our policies reflect our values of fairness, dignity, and family. We can live in a city which fights to protect our constitutional rights. We can live in a city that says, "Ya basta," when immigrants, refugees, and Muslims and other historically oppressed communities are under attack by the federal government. Our city has the opportunity to be on the right side of justice. This resolution is a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Next up, I want to introduce very quickly Andrea Plaza. Yo me encuentro. Thank you, Andrea.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrea Plaza, and I'm the Executive Director of Encuentro. Encuentro's mission is to transform New Mexico into a thriving community for all its residents, and we do this by engaging Latino immigrant families in educational and career development opportunities that build skills for economic and social justice. As community members devoted to ensuring the economic health and well-being of our city, we share an increasing concern for the continued safety of immigrant families and business owners in Albuquerque. We are living in an era in which the Trump administration is targeting the very workers and small business owners that play a vital role in the economic solvency of our city. Targeting immigrant families is not only immoral, it is not good economic policy. Over the last 5 years, Encuentro has participated in city-led efforts to support our immigrant entrepreneurial community through initiatives like Living Cities and the Molino Project, precisely because we recognize the important contributions these businesses make to our overall economic landscape. Immigrant businesses have created jobs, generated millions of dollars in local tax revenue, and revitalized many of our city's business corridors. They are the bread and butter for hundreds of immigrant families who enroll their children in our schools, buy and build homes, and contribute to building the economic and social fabric of our neighborhoods and community gathering spaces. Immigrant-owned businesses are essential to our public safety, and their collaboration with local law enforcement supports community policing efforts that keep our neighborhoods and business districts safe and accessible. We are proud of the contributions that immigrants make to New Mexico's economy. Immigrants are twice as likely to start a business as U.S.-born citizens, and immigrant-owned businesses generated approximately $386 million in economic activity in New Mexico between 2006 and 2010, according to the Partnership for the New American Economy. And immigrants play a vital role in New Mexico's workforce and comprise 12% of the state's workforce in 2016, according to the Migration Policy Institute. And unauthorized immigrants in New Mexico paid $101.5 million in state and local taxes in 2010, according to data from the Institute for Taxation and Economic Policy. We commend the council sponsors of this bill for recognizing the importance and urgency of proactively responding to national directives that threaten to lead to family separation, strip immigrants of due process, and instill fear in hardworking families, all of which negatively affect our local economy. We would also like to honor all of the immigrant-owned small businesses and workers that have worked mano a mano, hand in hand, with elected officials throughout the years to pass policies that are conducive to keeping our families together, a quintessential New Mexican value, in addition to promoting economic growth, something that our city desperately needs. In voting to strengthen Albuquerque's immigrant-friendly policies, you are joining with members of the business community who value hard work, family unity, and justice to voice a strong commitment to protecting and keeping families together, without whom Albuquerque would not be the vibrant, diverse, and welcoming place that it is. Thank you.
Very briefly, we want to introduce Abbas Akil, who's the former president of the Islamic Center of New Mexico and an advocate and an ally for a lot of us in the Islamic and Muslim community here.
Thank you,
Abbas. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. On behalf of the Muslim community of Albuquerque, I'm representing the Islamic Center of New Mexico. I want to add my voice and my community's voice to everything that was said here so emotionally by Mariana, and also to recognize that what we are doing today, this resolution is not just about the fear and intimidation, but it's also for standing up for humanity. We as human beings have to value each other and not give in to these moves by this administration to dehumanize us so that these measures can be carried out. So I really applaud the courage of our leadership, political leadership of the city, in taking this step and standing up to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Abbas. Thanks for being here. And before we turn it back over to Councilor Peña for questions, I want to introduce Claudia Medina from Enlace Comunitario. Thank you so much.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Claudia Medina. I'm the Executive Director of Enlace Comunitario. Enlace is an agency that provides services to immigrant victims of domestic violence and that strengthens immigrant families and families in general in central New Mexico. We have worked, or I have worked for the last 25 years in this field, and throughout those years I have met thousands of families that are immigrants and are very strong contributors of the to Albuquerque in the arts, as workers, and also as mothers and fathers. We at Enlace throughout these years have met also many victims of domestic violence that face an additional barrier. You know, victims of domestic violence face many barriers, but immigrant victims face additional barriers. And one of the most pressing barriers for them is the fear of deportation. Now, with the fear of deportation has increased more than ever because of the Trump administration positions on deportations, on immigrant rights in general. That fear has permeated throughout the community in Albuquerque, and immigrant victims in particular are more fearful to go to the police and report the crime committed against them, and are less likely to go to court because they are in fear of finding ICE in court or being deported by the police. So I want to just read quickly a national study that was released by the National Alliance to End Sexual Violence and the National Network to End Domestic Violence. In May of 2017, they confirmed the same fear and the same issues that we are facing in Albuquerque. 78% of advocates reported that immigrant survivors expressed concerns about contacting the police. 3 in 4 service providers reported that immigrant survivors have concerns about going to court for a matter related to the abuse. And 43% of advocates work with immigrant survivors who dropped the criminal or civil cases because they were afraid to continue with their cases. So I would like to take a minute to thank both Councilor Peña and David for introducing this resolution. This resolution is gonna make a difference in the life of many victims of domestic violence, and it's gonna make a difference on our immigrant community. I'm very proud to be an immigrant, and I know that Albuquerque is also proud to have a strong immigrant community. And with this resolution, we are going to actually strengthen that community. Thank you very much.
So, with that, as you can tell, we have representatives and individuals from organizations and communities that have helped us through this process and been a part of developing this resolution and others as we continue to move forward. In a soundbite, what this does today is very simple. It simply says that no matter who you are, no matter your status or your perceived status, if you want to access city services, elected officials, or City Hall, you have the right to do that in Albuquerque without having to be feared that if you get a library card or signed your kid up for after-school care, that a federal ICE agent might knock on your door. And it means that if you have an encounter with the police, that's an encounter between you and the city of Albuquerque if you need help. And ICE will not be in our prisoner transport center, as Councilor Peña has made sure to include. And so with that, I think we'll turn it back over to Councilor Peña. We'll take a few questions if we have any, and then we, of course, have some folks that are welcome to talk more one-on-one if you'd like. So thank you. Anything else we can follow? It's cold. So, yeah, go ahead.
So the Secretary of Homeland Security confirmed earlier this week they're seeking to charge leaders of sanctuary cities. What's your reaction to that?
My door is open. I welcome them to come try. This is very clearly not a federal issue. This is very clearly a federal issue, not a city issue. We have an obligation to take care of the people who live here in our community, and they're doing good work. They're putting their kids through school. They simply want help, just like anybody else does. And they can come after the folks that are going to stand up for them. And I'm willing to bet that the hundreds of people who showed up at the city council meeting last year to show their support for immigrants would stand in the way if we really had to get to it. I don't think that's a problem.